to episode 2 of Tea Time with Tea. I hope you guys had a wonderful day. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I've been thinking about this like all day since yesterday because I had such a great time, and I want to tell you guys a couple things about yesterday. After I had that tea, I slept better than I've ever slept in my entire life. Like, it was one of those sleeps where like I went to bed and just woke up. So I want you guys to tell me like how you felt about the chamomile tea, and let me know. At the very end of this, I'm gonna rate all of them and like tell you guys my favorites and recommend the ones I like the most, and we'll kind of just go from there. So today we're gonna be reading chapter 2 of Writing Down Your Soul, and we're gonna be trying the peppermint tea. So it's gonna be by the same person as the chamomile tea. We're gonna see how it all is. So first thing, ooh, peppermint tea smells so good. It's kind of uplifting. Really like the scent of it. I'm gonna try it first without the honey just to see how the natural flavors are. Very relaxing, a little bit more uplifting than the last one, but I can feel the aroma of it makes me want to concentrate. It makes me want to do something productive in a way that isn't overly stimulating. Let's try it with a little bit of honey, see if it changes the flavor profile at all. And guys, if you guys have any recommendation for honeys or teas, or if I'm saying anything wrong, or if you guys like different books, just let me know. I like building a nice community with this. I own a martial arts studio and I teach a bunch of people, and I like building up groups. And if you guys really like this, just let me know and we could talk in the comments section and, build off of this. That's perfect. Flavor this one, 9 out of 10. I like this even better than the chamomile tea. Let's look at a couple of the benefits. Now, I learned from yesterday, I'm just gonna read the summary of this because I'm reading it off of Healthline, and there's like a couple paragraphs for each benefit, so I'll be real quick with this one. Number 1, it may ease digestive issues. Peppermint oil has been shown to relax muscles in your digestive system and improve various digestive symptoms. Therefore, peppermint tea may provide similar benefits. May help relieve tension, headaches, and migraines. This is great for me because I just get headaches all the time. While no evidence exists that peppermint tea improves headache symptoms, research suggests that peppermint oil reduces tension, headaches, and migraines. Number 3, it may freshen your breath. Peppermint oil has been shown to kill germs that lead to bad breath. Peppermint tea, which contains peppermint oil, may improve breath as well. Perfect for Valentine's Day coming up. Number 4, may relieve clogged sinuses. While there is a limited evidence that drinking peppermint tea may help unclog your sinuses, a warm beverage containing menthol, such as peppermint tea, may help you breathe a little easier. I can already feel that. May improve your energy. Peppermint oil has been shown to relieve mental and physical fatigue in some studies, but research specifically on peppermint tea is lacking. May help relieve menstrual cramps. Drinking peppermint tea may reduce the intensity and length of menstrual cramps, since peppermints help prevent muscle contractions. However, more research is needed. May be beneficial against bacterial infections. Studies confirm that peppermint effectively inhibits several types of bacteria, including those that cause foodborne illnesses and contagious illnesses. That's really cool. Studies actually confirm that one. It's beautiful. May improve your sleep. Little scientific evidence suggests that peppermint tea is beneficial for sleep. However, it's a caffeine-free beverage that may help you relax before bedtime. I find that just having tea, regardless of what it is, as long as it's caffeine-free, winds me down. And there's something about just having that routine that, even if it's anything, like even if it's just adding a little bit of stretching before you go to bed, having that routine every night that you do no matter what helps your mind get set up for sleep. And I think a lot of people are just scrolling on their phones and having all that blue light and everything like that. I think it's good to make a routine that starts to get you away from so many electronics and pushes you more towards something like drinking tea and stretching and reading a book. I've really noticed it helped me a lot for my sleep. Number 9, it may aid in weight loss. Peppermint tea is a calorie-free beverage that may help satisfy your sweet tooth. I already noticed that one. Even before I added the tea, it's a very sweet drink. Reduce your appetite. However, more studies on peppermint tea and weight loss are needed. May improve seasonal allergies. Peppermints contain rosmarinic acid, which has been shown to reduce allergy symptoms such as sneezing and runny nose. However, evidence on the efficacy of peppermint tea against allergy symptoms is limited. May improve concentration. Peppermint oil found in peppermint tea may help increase alertness and memory, which may improve concentration, and it's easy to add to your diet. It is a tasty, calorie-free, and caffeine-free tea that can be enjoyed at any time of the day. Hope you guys enjoyed some of the benefits of that. Let's get right to our second chapter of our book. You guys had a great day. You guys, maybe by the end of this, we'll start journaling a little bit. Just from the first chapter, I've already learned some cool stuff from it. All right, chapter 2. How I discovered the voice, or rather, how the voice discovered me. It's a surprise to me and everyone I know that I'm the author of a book on deep soul writing. The truth is, I was never much of a journaler. Sure, when I was upset, I'd grab a notebook and write furiously for a day or two, but never consistently and never long enough to resolve anything. Mind you, I love the idea of having a rich spiritual life. I love to imagine myself sipping tea and writing profound thoughts in a tooled leather journal with morning sun dappling the pages. To bring this fantasy to life, I bought The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, but it sat on a shelf alongside all the other great spiritual books I would read as soon as I had the time. Meanwhile, I had a counseling career. I had clients and projects and reports. I had appointments and lunch dates and speaking engagements. I was a busy woman, a woman with no time to journal. Until November 1st, 1996. I had caught my husband sleeping with his secretary the summer before. He moved out in September, but he didn't move on. On October 31st, our Halloween-crazed 7-year-old begged me to invite his dad to join us for our annual Halloween extravaganza. But after trick-or-treating, my husband wouldn't leave. He thought we should have sex. When I refused, he shoved me out of the door. He screamed that I'd never see my child again. He drank, he broke furniture, he cried, he drank some more, but he finally left at 1 a.m. I collapsed into a dense, dark sleep. At dawn, my eyes shot open, 5 words rocketing to the surface. I'm afraid of you. Those 5 words changed my life. I called my husband at noon and told him I wanted a divorce. He didn't say much, too hungover, I thought. At 5, he called back. In a flat, barely audible voice, he told me that he had a shotgun in his mouth and was calling to say goodbye. My mind raced. What do I do? All I could think of were those movies with the main character frantically trying to keep the other guy on the phone. Keep him talking. That's it. Keep him talking. I talked first. I talked about our son, our beautiful son. I asked questions. I asked how he felt, what he'd eaten, and what was happening at work. He began to talk, just a few mumbled words, but he was saying something. Suddenly, in the middle of a sentence, he hung up. No goodbye, no grunt, no shot, no nothing. Terrifying headlines flashed across my mind. Estranged husband kills family, man shoots wife, then self. I started calling friends. They all had perfectly reasonable explanations for why my son and I couldn't stay with them. I'd love to, but my husband doesn't think it's a good idea. We don't really have the room, you know. I don't think your son would be comfortable here. Do you? Are you sure that's really necessary? Maybe he's just trying to scare you. Can't you stay with a neighbor? Well, no, I couldn't stay with a neighbor. I had called on my neighbors first, and he didn't want to take sides. Desperate, I called another second grader's mom, a single mom I barely knew. Before I could finish, she stopped me. Come straight here, she said. I'll back my car out of the garage. Pull right in. Don't worry about clothes or food. I'll take care of everything. I grabbed my son and our Great Dane puppy and hustled them out the door. My husband did not kill himself that night, but from then on, my family was pretty sure he was going to kill me. His rages often made it look like they were right. Overnight, my professional life disappeared. Clients have a hard time sticking around when you go into hiding every other month. Friends stop coming when they see you wearing a police emergency call button around your neck. So did I start journaling? No, I did not. I sat and cried in the living room with my phone unplugged so I wouldn't hear his threats, and the blinds down so he couldn't see me if he drove by. My mother, like all good Catholic women at her time, loved to say, God works in mysterious ways. Whenever something ludicrous happened, I'd say, okay, Mom, how could that possibly be God's doing? And she'd say, well, dear, God works in mysterious ways. I always thought that saying was a complete cop-out, until Harley, our Great Dane puppy, took things into his own hands, or rather, teeth. I was sitting in my usual position, sniffling and dabbling my eyes when I realized Harley was no longer resting his head on the ottoman and looking up at me with that consummate Great Dane blend of sadness and devotion. Harley, I called. Where are you? I could hear him in the hallway, and I got up to find him. He was loping slowly towards me, struggling to carry something too heavy for his scrawny neck. I pulled his burden out of his mouth and laughed. It was the artist's way, now decorated with ripped corners, teeth marks, and dangerous. I wiped it off, sat down, and began to read. On page 15, I stopped cold. Anyone who faithfully writes morning pages will be led to a connection with a source of wisdom within. When I am stuck with a painful situation or problem that I don't think I know how to handle, I will go to the pages and ask for guidance. Julia Cameron was talking to me. I needed wisdom. I most certainly was stuck in a painful situation, and I sure didn't know how to handle it. It was pretty clear that sitting and sobbing was not solving my problems. I hunted up a cheap black notebook in my office and an old brown fountain pen. The book said to write 3 morning pages. Well, it was a morning, and at long last I had all the time in the world to write. But I didn't follow the directions, that is, not the artist's way directions. Something happened when I read that passage. My soul's needle, which had been careening madly around its compass for weeks, snapped to true north and picked up some silent, subterranean instructions that guided me to write in a unique way. Dear God, I began. I have no idea why I started that way. It just felt right. Necessary, actually. Whenever my parents were frightened, they threw themselves to their knees and begged God for help. I guess I was doing the same thing in my own way. Of course, they prayed rosaries. Me, I vented. Oh Lord, how I vented. I fussed and fumed at God. Are you paying any attention? Do you see what's happening here? Do you care? How are we going to live through this? How can I protect my baby? What am I going to do, and where are you? I didn't write 3 pages that morning. I wrote 30. That was a clue that I had something to say, and writing was somehow helping me say it. After an hour and a half of furious, full speed ahead scribbling, I didn't have any answers, but I did feel a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit lighter. So the next morning I did it again. Day after day, I stabbed at the page in angry black ink. I told God every last little detail of every last little thing that was happening. What my husband did or threatened to do. How I canceled my son's birthday party because his father said he showed up with a gun. What happened when he broke into our house. How it felt to protect my son with my body. What happened when we called the police for the first time, the second, the third, and the fourth. How the school insisted I drop my son off late and pick him up early to prevent scenes at school. How I moved from one coffee shop to another until it was time to pick him up. How I couldn't eat. How my son couldn't sleep. How he gnashed his teeth all night. How he crept in my bed and would not leave. How we startled in the room at the dark, every creak and crack. How he crawled into my lap and rocked silently for 30 minutes before he would leave for visitations with his father. After a while, I noticed something. Not the first day or the second, but one day, there it was. A little bit of wisdom on that page. Not the answer to my life's problems, but definitely guidance for the days. Occasionally, the answer was what to do or what not to do, but most of the time, it was something smaller, something subtler, and perhaps something richer. How to shift my thinking. The first time it happened, I stopped writing and stared at the page. Huh? That wasn't my voice. I didn't write that. I never even had that thought before, but there it was, and I knew, somehow just knew, that this guidance was important. This guidance was it. This guidance was my salvation. So I followed that guidance. Like Hansel in the fairy tale, I didn't know where I was or where I was going, but I followed those precious crumbs of wisdom. Step by step, day by day, journal entry by journal entry, I inched forward. Every morning I wrote, Dear God, and every morning the voice answered. One Saturday morning, I wrote about how powerless I felt when I suddenly realized that the newspaper article I was reading about an unsolved road rage crime described my ex-husband and his truck perfectly, and that the crime had occurred 30 minutes after he had picked up our son the day before. The voice wrote to me about the true nature of power. I prayed and tapped into that power and brought my son safely home without leaving my chair. I wrote about the heartache of listening to a voicemail of my son struggling under his father's screaming command to say it until his little voice squeaked, Mom, you are a lying sack of shit. And the voice wrote to me about size. It asked me which was bigger, this terrible thing or the divine. I knew the answer and turned my problem over to the divine. I wrote about having an enemy, a big scary enemy. I asked the voice what I should do about my enemy. The voice told me to love my enemy. I didn't like that, and I confess I didn't do it, not for a long, long time. I wrote about how scared and weak and helpless I felt, like a person riddled with holes. What's wrong with me, I cried, and the voice wrote about strength, true strength. I wrote about court. 12 times I cried over all the pages, telling the voice that no matter what evidence I presented, the road rage incident, the voicemail recording, 4 police reports, parents who testified to my ex-husband's threats, proof of guns in his house, the legal system insisted our son have regular, unsupervised visits with his father. The voice listened, wiped my tears, and listened some more. I told the voice how my son cried before visitations. Tuesdays, he sobbed. I hate Tuesdays because after Tuesday comes Wednesday, and on Wednesday I have to see my dad. I told the voice to protect my baby when he was at his father's. The voice always did. I wrote about my ex-husband's weapons. The voice asked about mine. Words, I admitted. Words are my weapon. And the voice helped me put my weapons down. I wrote a list of all the things I didn't want to do but had to do in my marriage. The voice talked to me about the difference between have to and chose to. I wrote about how I disappeared into a secret waiting room in my heart when I couldn't bear what was happening. The voice talked to me about the beautiful language of no. I wrote about all the dreadful decisions I made and how badly they all turned out. The voice talked to me about forgiving myself. I wrote about my frustration waiting for the judge to let me move back to my family in Wisconsin, and the voice talked about me being frustrated waiting for them to become who I really am. Help me remember, I said. Who is this frightened woman? And the voice said, unafraid. Unafraid. It was a lovely thought, a momentous thought, but I felt quite the opposite. Frightened, broke, and alone would be more like it. Well, maybe not alone. After all, I have this real conversations in my soul journal with a divine voice, so how alone could I be? And I was getting answers, and my life was slowly changing. Each morning I was a bit stronger, a bit wiser, a bit more aware that somehow I was going to be all right. A wee part of me kept raising her tiny head and proclaiming, I'm going to heal, not just survive. That's good enough. That's not good enough. I want to be whole and happy again. I thought that little woman was nuts, but occasionally I let her have her say. If I was ever going to make it all the way and be healed and happy, I needed a miracle. Quite a few, actually. I was getting guidance. I was learning to shift my thinking. Couldn't I get miracles too? I mean, real miracles. Things of substance. Money, to be precise. So I asked. One morning I wrote, Dear God, you know I need $10,000 for the attorney. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I know you're going to send $10,000. Thank you right here and right now for your gift of $10,000. Nothing happened. There was no brilliant words, no lottery numbers, no treasure maps. I got up, made a pot of tea. 2 days later, my mother called. Dear, she said, we've given money to all the other children, but we've never given any to you. So dear, we're sending you $10,000. Her use of we was precious. My father, the other half of we, had been dead for 5 years. I said thank you, of course, to my mother, but I also wrote a profound, deep thank you to my real source in my soul journal the next day. The $10,000 covered my legal bills, but it didn't touch the house expenses. I had enough savings to last almost a year. Spending on the house was foolhardy, but everything else was blowing up in my son's life. I want him to be able to stay in the only house he'd ever known and continue to go to the sweet private school he'd attended since he was in diapers. But the day eventually came when I didn't have money for the mortgage or tuition. I wrote in my journal, Dear God, I don't know how you're going to handle this, but I know you are. I need $2,000 and I need it now. Thank you, and amen. An hour later, the phone rang. It was my Soul Remain client. She said the strangest thing. I don't know why, but I just feel like you should send us an invoice for $2,000. Of course, I did know why, but I just said I'd be delighted to. The next morning, I wrote thank you in huge letters and had a long chat with the voice about gratefulness. As my son's second grade year came to a close, it was time to face the reality that private school was no longer an option. So I went on a hunt and found gold, a tiny magnet public school with just one third grade class of 25 high-performance students. There were only 3 openings, and they would be filled by a countrywide lottery. All the principal could suggest was that I get my son's application on time so his name would be in the pool. I went straight to my journal. Dear God, I found a beautiful, calm, peaceful school for my son. You know how much he has suffered. You know how frightened he is to go to no school. Please, I trust you to place this precious child in a school where he will learn and be happy. I leave this in your hands. The morning after the lottery, the school called. My son was number 1 on the list of over 300 children. Eventually, my savings was gone, and I had to put the house on the market. The last month in the house, I faced a stack of bills with only $343 in my checking account. Dear God, I wrote, I know you hear me. I have no idea how you're going to do it this time, but I know you will provide for us now and always, and all is well. Thank you in advance for the miracles you provide. I blessed the envelope and began. The lowest power bill I ever had was $60, but this one I owed only $14. Despite my best efforts at conservation, the water bill always ran over $100 every 2 months. But when I opened this month's, I blinked at the amount due, $24.15. Gas was usually $55 or so, but the amount due to this mobile oil bill was $13.13. The phone was only $22.98, while the cable bill was for the normal amount, $33.36. The garbage invoice was always for exactly $58.45, but this time the amount due was $0. The statement said I'd paid double last month, but I didn't remember doing that. Finally, Visa. I knew this one wasn't going to be pretty. I took a deep breath, looked to heaven, and opened the envelope. Amount due, -$39.09. In the big letters it said, credit balance, do not pay. In the end, I had $48 left in my checking account, enough to buy a week's groceries if I shopped carefully at the Greek produce stand. This time, I didn't just write my thank yous, I danced them, up and down the hallway, laughing and twirling and singing my thank yous in joyous yelps. Thank you, God, thank you, God, thank you, God. Were these miracles, coincidences, delusions? If there was any doubt in my mind, it would soon be erased. I wrote down my soul every day for 3 years. At first, I just complained about my problems and begged the voice to fix them. But as I became more and more conscious of the direction and guidance I was receiving, I began to pursue deeper, richer questions that probed my soul and lanced my deepest wounds. Profound answers I discovered came through profound questions. How did I create this mess? What was I thinking? How do I stop fighting with someone who won't stop fighting? What is the taproot of all of my fears? Who are the negative voices inside of my head? How can I banish them? What is my purpose? How can I build a conscious, joyful life? What is love? What is love really? What are my true vows, the vows that can never be broken? The question about vows gave me profound pause. I wrote pages on end about vows we make and vows we break. So many promises in life get broken. Are they really vows, I wondered? How could I ever, never, ever break? I explored this question with the voice for weeks. In deep dialogue, I concluded that vows aren't weighty promises made to fend off some undesirable future. No. True vows are words that articulate who I am, who I was, and who I always will be. If they are that, a description of who I am at my core, well then, I can never break them, can I? To break them, I'd have to stop being me. That left one big question to explore. Who am I when I am finally fully me? I asked. I made lists and pared them down. Is this true for me? Always. I played with the words. Can I say it better, more clearly, more succulently, more powerfully? What words made my heart sing in recognition? Slowly, the list narrowed to 7 short declarations. When the 7 felt sufficiently cooked, I typed them on a piece of paper and taped it to the wall. These, I told the voice, are my vows. This is who I am, the real me, the whole me, the authentic me, the me I uncovered talking to you. Janet's covenant. Number 7, pray always. Number 6, seek truth. Number 5, surrender. There is no path but God's. Number 4, come from love. Number 3, honor myself. Number 2, live in partnership. Number 1, unite to create good. I looked at my covenant. It felt good to have my 7 vows on the wall, reminding me daily who I am, but didn't feel quite complete. I wrote about that. Dear God, what's missing? Well, what was missing, I quickly learned, was the ceremony. When people declare their vows, they go through a ceremony, a wedding, novitate, ordination, some kind of public declaration of their new commitment. That's what I needed, a celebration. I called a circle of 11 wonderful women to witness my covenant with Spirit on November 11, 2000. I read my vows. Then we prayed and danced and sang and drank champagne and feasted on caviar and poached salmon. To honor the occasion and cement it for all time, I traded all the jewelry my ex-husband had given me for one gorgeous dark orange Mexican opal ring with 11 tiny diamonds on each side and the word 7 engraved on the inside. My life had truly changed. The woman who had cried all day now moved through the world with vigor and purpose. The woman who had cowered in fear now confidently stood her ground. The woman who had been forced to sell her house now owned a beautiful townhome. The woman whose consulting practice had disappeared now wrote deep soul-writing guides to help heal broken hearts. What happened, people asked. Writing happened. Connection with the voice happened. Deep questions need for even deeper thinking happened. Willingness to change happened. Prayer happened. Whatever it was, people wanted it, and I was on fire to share. A large Methodist church in Tampa invited me to address a divorce recovery group on the topic of forgiveness. I had to think about what journaling exercises I had on forgiveness. I found one profound writing exercise of self-forgiveness and one that mentioned forgiveness in passing, but that was it. At the group meeting, I shared my story. I showed the members pages where the voice showed up. I read from some of my favorite sacred texts. I encouraged their active participation in writing deeply from the soul. I answered lots and lots of questions. When the time was up, they didn't want to leave. 3 months later, the church invited me to come back. The topic this time, forgiveness. I went right to my journal. Dear God, I don't have enough material on forgiveness and you know it. Okay, I get it. The teacher needs to teach what the teacher needs to learn. Well, I'm ready. I just don't know what to do. You show me how to forgive, and I want to forgive. Ask and ye shall receive, and boy did I receive. Songs on the radio, articles in magazines, conversations with friends, even my book's group selection that month, they were all about forgiveness. I was swimming in a sea of forgiveness. I knew this bounty wasn't just for a good lesson plan. It was something more, something I needed to do, something missing in my life and my books. With that thought simmering in my head, I went to church the next Sunday. The minister opened her lesson with a Bible passage I've never heard before. It is someone who is forgiven, little who shows little love. Luke 7:47. The moment I heard this verse, my heart knew what to do. I had to forgive my ex-husband. Finally, totally, and completely forgive him, so he could love again, so I could love again. At long last, I wanted him to be free to be loved and be loved. As the minister spoke, I wrote the most beautiful and powerful prayer I've ever written. When the service ended, I didn't move. I felt strange, woozy almost, like I was breathing different air. Something had definitely happened. At 5 that afternoon, I pulled into McDonald's parking lot to pick up my son from a visitation with his father. The moment my ex-husband saw me, he popped out of his car and started towards me. My stomach tightened, but there was no time to reach my cell phone. He knocked on the window. I lowered it 4 inches. His fist came flying in. I flinched back against the seat. Something fluttered to my lap. "What's this?" I stammered. "Half the dentist," he muttered. I looked down. There was a check for $38, exactly half of our son's last dental appointment. According to the divorce agreement, my husband was required to pay half our son's medical expenses. Until that day, he hadn't paid a dime and owed me thousands. "Thank you," I called out to his receding back as he walked away. The next morning, I pondered in my journal about that check. Dear God, why did he do that? I turned back the page and looked at my notes from Sunday. There was my prayer of final and complete forgiveness, written an hour or two before he wrote that check. I never told my ex-husband I'd written that prayer, but from then on, our relationship was less strained. Our son, however, continued to struggle with visitation. Finally, in the spring of 2002, he looked his father in the eye and said, "Dad, I'm not coming to your house anymore, and I'm not getting in your car with you again." When my son told me what he said, I had 2 conflicting reactions. First, I was proud of him for finding the strength to speak his truth. On the other hand, if our son never saw his father again, how would they ever heal? And if they never healed, wouldn't that leave a gaping hole in both of their hearts? I talked the situation over with the voice in my journal and realized what to do. I shared the idea with my son. He wasn't too crazy about it, but he let me call his father. "Why don't you come here for visitation?" I said. "Come on Thursday and Sunday night for dinner." My ex-husband came the very next Thursday. That first night we sat at the dinner table looking at one another. This is strange, I thought, but somehow okay. The moment dinner ended, our son scooted upstairs, obstinately to do homework. The son and father probably didn't say 5 sentences to each other that night, but it was a beginning. The next week, I told my mother my ex-husband was coming for dinner. She was appalled. "How can you let a man who tried to kill you back in your house?" "Well, he isn't trying to kill me, Mom, and I'm not afraid of him. And I want our son to see that I'm not afraid, so he can stop being afraid." She sighed. "I hope you know what you are doing, dear." I told my sister. She hung up on me. I told my friends. One yelled at me. Most just shook their heads. My dearest friend tried to understand. She asked me why I was doing this. I told her I was doing it in the hopes that the pain could heal between our son and his father. "Okay, good intention," she said, "but how can you do it?" "Well, that's easy," I said. "I have completely and totally forgiven him. For 15 months, my ex-husband joined us for dinner twice a week, unless he was too sick to get out of bed. Then, on October 6, 2003, he died of a massive brainstem stroke. October 6 wasn't just any day that year. It was Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, the highest holy day in the Jewish calendar, a detail I could not miss. I called his best friend, and together we went to my ex-husband's business. We called his lawyer and banker and learned that the business was in dire financial straits and he would probably have gone bankrupt if he didn't die. We met with his few remaining employees and arranged their last paychecks. When the office was finally empty, I sat in the dust and started to go through his files. Faced with 6 rusty 5-drawer file cabinets backed to the gills with unorganized and often unlabeled files, I began at the bottom, pulling out each file, reading it, and trying to figure out what to do with the papers inside. Stuffed in the back of the 3rd drawer, I found a thick file labeled life insurance. Our divorce agreement had required him to carry $250,000 in life insurance for our son, but the papers showed he had let his life insurance lapse. Then, through my tears, I also saw that the week I had invited him, he started coming to our home to see his son. He had begun a contentious battle with his life insurance company. Although it had taken him 6 months and $1,700 he did not have, not only did he get his insurance reinstated, but he had also increased it and named me beneficiary. When I received that check for $322,000, I knew I was holding tangible proof of the power of forgiveness. And just in case I missed the connection, the check was dated November 11th, 2003. 3 years to the day after my covenant celebration. I wonder sometimes what my life would be like if I had not engaged the voice in deep soul dialogue. Would I have safely navigated the terrors of my divorce? Would my heart have healed? Would the same miracles have happened? Would I have completely and totally forgiven my ex-husband? Would he have increased his life insurance and left it to me? I can't rewind the tape of my life and then play it forward in a new scenario without deep soul writing, so I guess I can never really know. But I'm fairly certain the answer would all be no. Writing from deep within my soul is now ingrained into my daily spiritual practice. It is how I meditate and how I pray. It's how I solve problems and how I learn. It's where I mourn and where I express joy and gratitude. It is who I am. And it may well be who you are too. After all, it is no accident this book has come to you. In the big scheme of things, there are no accidents, only divine appointments. My divorce was the worst experience of my life. It was also a divine appointment, an appointment with destiny, with the voice, and with myself. Without the divorce, I might never have discovered the voice, and without the wisdom of that voice, I simply could not have the life I have, the work I have, and the joy I feel today. We humans are an odd bunch. We are not very likely to turn to the divine in times of love and plenty, but let those winds of destruction come and we can't fall to our knees fast enough. If you are a kind of soul that needs a setback to force you to turn inwards, well, the universe, I'm sure, will be happy to comply. But here's a little fact that might warm your heart. You don't have to experience a trauma to receive that invitation. It's a standing invitation, open to all. Accept it, whether you are currently in good times or bad, and you will experience direct and immediate access to divine consciousness. Accept it, and you will hear and see the voice. Accept it, and you receive the wisdom and miracles your heart is longing for. How do you accept? That's easy. Set your intention to connect with the extraordinary voice within. Pick up a pen and begin. That was a lot to take in. Hope you guys enjoyed this chapter of the book. I got really lost in it. I'm really enjoying reading, really enjoying this process, and I'm really happy that some of you guys could be there with me to experience this. Hope you guys have a really nice cup of tea tonight. Hope you guys have really sweet dreams. And I can't wait to continue this and continue this experience with you guys tomorrow night. See you guys then. Have a good sleep.